planting the seed, right? And how many of you have ever been in a meeting where somebody, when you come out, they whisper in your ear, "Oh my heavens, Sandra was so aggressive, wasn't she, at that meeting?" Or maybe, somebody came out and they said quite the opposite. "Oh my God, Sam, she took so long to get the message out at the meeting. It was killing me," right? So these are descriptions, right? And describe communication behavior. When people say that to you, what they're really saying is that person doesn't communicate the way I communicate, and I want them to communicate the way I communicate, right? We want to enforce the way we do things, the way we communicate on our workplace colleagues, right? And this is not how we solve the problem when we have issues and concerns within communication in the workplace, okay? The way to solve problems within, and these are proven, okay, the particular program I'm going to show you has been around in the UK for many, many years. It's extremely successful. And we here at 5D are the organization that has brought it here to Canada. And so we're very excited about introducing organizations to this communicating with Clarity4D, okay? So a solution, which is through Clarity4D, is knowing more about your own self and the way that you communicate, and knowing about how you show up at a meeting, how you show up as you're interacting with individuals, right, in the workplace, right? The other area that we're going to look at is the gaining that knowledge and the benefit and being able to recognize the other styles or the other communication styles that people are using, so that we can modify our own communication style, okay? And this is really important with respect to bringing about a better way to communicate within an organization. I guess the saying goes, change starts with you, okay? And this is where we're going to take you a little bit on a journey of self-discovery, okay? Let me see if I can make my PowerPoint move. I can. All right, so again, I've already mentioned that. So what I'm going to try and explain to you, but first, before I do, this particular diagram shows Clarity4D communication, this journey, right, that you can take when you participate or your team participates, within this educational process, right? It's not linear, okay? It moves around a bit, but I'm going to try and present it to you in a linear fashion, okay? Just to sort of try and bring, no pun intended, clarity to the different talents, right, that resolve around this particular program, okay? So the first level, or the first entry when you do this journey, this educational program, it's the first dimension is discovery. And as I said, that's that self-awareness. You become more self-aware about how you're communicating, how you bring yourself into a meeting, how you bring yourself talking and connecting with individuals. Another level within this program you can take is that 2D. Now, two-dimensional being as in, this is an opportunity to do a 360, where we actually get individuals to join in and they give their perspective as to how you're communicating. So this gives you like that 360 view of your communication style, okay? The third level, the third dimension within this program is called diversify, right? This is where we uncover your hidden potential, areas that you could be really good at communicating, but you're just not applying it. So how can we encourage you, and how can you move to the fourth level and start sort of self-developing that particular program, right? So you can, again, over time, right, because we can't change the way we do things immediately, but if we practice and apply new techniques, new strategies, we can change. Okay, so Clarity4D model is really, it comes from the ancient Greek philosophers of Aristotle, the four elements, water, fire, ice, wind, right? And it works in conjunction with a psychologist, he's Swiss, Carl Jung. And he recognized, and we've all heard this before, that individuals, we have intrinsic preferences, right, for the way that we want to behave. You might have had sort of discovered, well, I'm an extrovert. Well, that person's an introvert. Oh, that person's a very feely person. You know, that person is a real thinker, right? So these are the two things that that Clarity4D has sort of molded together in order to bring about what they call this model, this framework. All right. So when we look at this model, this framework, what we have is this water. I'm just going to water energy person when they communicate. This is the fire person energy when they communicate. This is the air, and this is the earth. Okay. Now we could all probably read this and decide which one we are. Well, when I started this, when I looked at this program and I became involved in it, I said, well, I can tell you right now, and I'm sure Zoran and Malcolm will agree with this. I am fire, right? I'm focused, I'm decisive, I'm direct, and I'm challenging, and I'm assertive, right? I see Zoran going like this. Okay, we'll get you to do the 2D profile on me, and we'll go from there. But anyway,
No. I mean,
yeah,
I'm just kind of reading one by one and trying to
yeah.
incorporate.
Yeah, but you know, we all say, well, this is me, right? I'm definitely a fire
Yeah.
communicator, okay, right? But the reality is we are all very unique and we all use all of these energies, these communication energies within our daily basis, all right? And when you do a profile, or you have your team do a profile, which is all done electronically, and it, you know, correlates all the data, you answer questions, situations, right? You come up with this wonderful version, right, of who you really are and what, you know, areas you're using when you communicate. Okay. Now, I said I was fire. Well, this is me, right? This is how I ended up. This is how I show up at a meeting. This is how I show up in the workplace. Okay. And as you can see, I'm not all fire, right? I'm actually, you know, lean to all these particular areas and more predominantly towards what's opposite of fire to the earth. All right. So for me, this was very enlightening. And I was like, wow, you know, this is me, right? So it's quite an interesting thing because what we want to do is we want to take the this is me and say, okay, so where in this are opportunities for me to develop other areas that I'm maybe not utilizing? Why am I not utilizing this sunny side, right? Okay, this air side. But so what we do in the workshop, you discover, right? Your team discovers, right? The different energies that they want to maybe or how to reduce, okay? Because there are times when you need to reduce your energy when you're having, you know, a meeting or a discussion with someone. But there's other times when you have to, if you're able to recognize the different communication styles within the room, right? You might want to draw on those areas that you're not utilizing very much because it's going to help you communicate with that other person better, okay, more effectively, right? So what I want to just go into here, and this has happened to all of us, I'm sure, when you think about a relationship in your team, maybe somebody that you've not connected well with at your workplace, okay? Maybe somebody who you struggled with to communicate, okay? Right? If you think about it, right? Maybe that person is the polar opposite of you. And that would be, give you cause for conflict, right? Because you both communicate, you know, different ends, right? You could be fire, I could be earth, and that's going to cause some conflict when we first meet. So the responsibility lies with me, right? Phil, if we were at a meeting, I realized you were earth and I was a really heavy a fire energy person, I need to change the way I communicate with you. It's not up to you to change, right? It's up to me to change because I'm in control of me, right? I'm not in control of you, right? So this is where this learning comes very beneficial for us as individuals within the workplace, right? Because if we can alter the way we're communicating with somebody so that we're communicating with them at within their energy, it's going to be far more effective. Okay. So this particular program, what it will do, it will actually help you you will learn how to recognize other people's communication energies, right? And that's going to help you adapt your style in order to create that more effective communication within a team, between two people, between you and your boss, or the boss and your employees. Okay. So that's what happens. So this is that sort of first dimension, that self-awareness, discovering how you show up, right? Okay. That's that first level. All right. So this is a profile of Anne, right? Okay. And this is how Anne sees herself. Okay. She's very obviously only 3%, that cool blue communicator. But she's in the other 3 quadrants, right? Okay. So what happens in the profile once it's generated, and there's many aspects of this, I'm only showing certain aspects because we have a limited time. And I can always meet with people and we can discuss this even further afterwards, right? These are the key attributes and talents that Anne brings to the team. Okay. This is where she really can contribute, right? Okay. This is she's in her zone, right? She's loyal, reliable, right? She's committed team supporter, right? But she's unlikely to sway by feeling, without logic, right? Okay. She brings evaluation, thoughtfulness, and accuracy to a team. So this is one aspect that profiling does, right? It highlights the attributes of the person, right? The other things it does, right? These are strategies to help or to help others communicate with Anne. So within her profile, this is something that she might want to sit down and discuss with her boss. Okay. If she's having problems with her boss, communicating with another team member, this is that opportunity to share, right? Okay. So strategies to help Anne communicate. If I was her boss, this is something I want to do. I want to talk to her in a very impersonal way. I want to be able to give her thinking space, walk away, give her time to process, right? Give her space to collect her thoughts and articulate them. Something I don't want to do when I'm working with Anne, right, is underestimate her need for being on her own occasionally, right? And I'm certain something I should never do with Anne is overstate facts and situations, right? She's already got it, right? Okay. So there's all different aspects, right? So that's kind of that 1D dimension, right? That you can take different information, use it yourself, but also share it with the people around you so they can learn more about your communication style, right? The second dimension takes you to a different level, okay? This new level, this is like having a 360 done, right? If you look, I'm just gonna try and move this, okay? This is how Anne saw herself. This is how she shows up. But the reality, this is how people see her, right? They see her more as fire and air, and they do not see her as she sees herself as this earth, compassionate, showing empathy, these types of things. So that gives her food for thought, right? That if she thinks she's giving empathy, but they're not receiving empathy, then there's an area that she needs to work on here, right? And in the workshop, we actually give some tools and tricks, right? In order for that person to sort of dive into this a little bit deeper and create a strategy for developing that area, okay? So the third dimension, which is called diversify, right? This is diversifying our own skill, our own knowledge with respect to communication, and recognizing and accepting that everybody communicates very uniquely, okay? And if we can recognize that preferred communication style of the other person, then that gives us an opportunity to adapt and adjust our own communication, right? But if you think about it, if everybody in the team has the same knowledge and skill, how much more effective can we be? How much more patient can we be? How much more helpful can we be in order to truly create a communication, effective communication within an organization? It's phenomenal. When you look at the U.S. last year, lost $4 billion, right? Um, in a year, and they said the problem that they lost it. These organizations lost $4 billion because there was a lack of communication within their organization, right? No organization functions well unless they have good communication, right? It has to exist. And I'm not just talking, this particular program doesn't run, it's not just about verbal communication, it's about, written communication. There's a whole multiple, forms and types of communication that we touch on throughout the program, okay? And for that person, right? So again, you acquire the knowledge and skill to recognize other individuals and how they prefer so you can adjust yours, okay? For instance, when we did this is Anne, okay? So when Anne communicates with a yellow, a person who is in that air, okay, that preference, okay? These are the things that Anne should be doing when she's communicating. Ask for their opinion, right? Have a very informal manner with that person, right? And indulge in some lighthearted chit chat. Things that she should not be doing with a person who is of that yellow preference, that air energy, okay? Don't be nitpicky, right? Okay. And don't appear to be disinterested in what that person is saying, right? Okay. Bless you, Ren.
Thanks.
So ignore, that need for some response, right? Do not ignore that you need to give some response to a person who is in yellow energy, okay? And again, it doesn't mean that that person is all yellow. It's just that in that moment, in that meeting, that person comes in a certain way, right? And it does alter. Again, it gives Anne tips when she's working with an individual who has that green energy and she recognizes their green energy. These are the things that she should be doing and not doing, okay? And these are the things, again, when she's with that fire person, right? Okay. So again, these are things that you need to recall, remember, adjust, and modify. Anne does when she's working with these other individuals within her team. Okay. And again, that calm blue, um, you know, individual, right? Do not compare, or don't, do come prepared with all the facts, follow the agreed procedures. These are tips. It's going to make that interaction, that connection, uh, far more productive. Okay. All right. So the fourth dimension of this program is, again, considering the areas and looking at the areas. And again, we go through different processes in order to do this, different activities and thinking and solutions, right? To help you stretch those areas that you don't normally use, right? And how to maybe recess those areas, those color areas, when you shouldn't be using them because the people in the room are not going to be receptive to those. Okay. So to teach you how to modify and shift. Okay. When we're able to understand that everybody is unique, right? And we can modify and shift, teams become far more effective, right? Okay. Communication becomes far more effective. And this helps companies grow. Okay. So again, this is a challenge, right? That now this is something that comes at when we did ands, right? Okay. These were again that development stages, and this was her creative strengths. And we identified what areas she needed to develop on. Because Anne is really good and offers really common sense advice when she's dealing with people's problems. But an area for development for her is she needs to be prepared, right, to offer this advice more readily with her colleagues. Even if they're not receptive to it, she needs to put it out there more because it's solid information that they can actually apply and do better, right? Okay. Um, one of her great strengths is she solves problems by attentive listening, right? Okay. Um, but she needs to develop an area where, because she's becoming too reliant on other people's ideas, could be a danger to her. Okay. All right. So she needs to have maybe a bit more of a voice. Okay. But these are all the things we get to sort of look at, right? When we go through, having your profile done, which again is electronically, right? And again, this has been proven and used in many, many different organizations, right, around the world, right? It's far more complex than I think I've presented. I'm going to stop sharing. I think I can do that and bring people out. So yeah, so I don't know how we're doing for time, but is there any questions? Any concerns? All right. Malcolm, how we doing?
Good. How are you?
Okay. I have a little, actually, a miniature little video. And Malcolm, maybe afterwards we can email it out to people so they have a bit understanding of it. And of course, we can meet with people and discuss how we can move this forward for them on a personal level or on a more of an organizational level for them. And one of the things I want to point out with this, it's very similar. A lot of people have experienced discs and insight and all this. My reason for tapping into this program is because it's economical, right? And organizations, DISC, and a lot of them, and not that they're not good. I don't want to discount that or discount them. What I want to say is that this is a more affordable opportunity, so you can disseminate it further throughout the organization, right? Get more mileage with your budget, right? Okay, is what I want to say, right? And that's one of the objectives that Clarity4D had, was they wanted more people to utilize it, and they knew that cost was a barrier for organizations. So this is very economical, right? And there's many facets to it that we can break down so that it really fits well for the organization, right? So